There you go. I was holding it down. That was the problem. Don't hold it down if you're presenting. Okay. Hello, everyone. So as Steve said, I work at Clackamas CSD. The title really means I'm the apps guy. Okay. I'm going to present to you something that I went through, and we'll leave it at that. But it's in a totally different, it's totally anonymous, it's all fake to you, but here's the information. It's one experience, okay? And I'm just going to present it. This is probably going to be the most non-techie session you've been through, and a lot of it's going to feel like a lawyer kind of session, but it's important information, so. Okay, let's get started. So like what was on the session, wait, I'm going to rearrange this. What was on the session description is looking for where we're going to source information to create the process in which you go through if you need to start that termination, how we're going to get there measuring performance to the end, to the point of recommendation of termination. So I'll explain why I'm going there, but we'll just keep going through this. So develop a rubric that aligns to both the essential functions of the job description and the performance standards on the evaluation. So looking at those two sources. Creating rubrics from a proactive and a reactive perspective. Examine the process of addressing deficient performance, right, which includes writing negative evaluations and plans of assistance. And looking at IT systems and solutions to help you gather the evidence to support that stuff. Okay. Number 5 will be the techie part. The rest is not. So, I am not a lawyer. I am not your HR department. I just give you information, okay? You can work from this, but you still got to go back to all of them for all of that official stuff, right? I need to prime 2 things before we start the session, getting into the meat of it. The first thing is, when we do performance of staff, I want to make sure that it comes from the right place, which is we're all here to improve staff. We're not here to get rid of them. So here's some food for thought. If you take a business class, they always say labor is your greatest asset and it's also your most expensive asset. But it's your greatest asset. So let's treat it like it's our greatest asset. We all are in IT, so it's ever evolving and constantly changing, right? Talk about that. That was this morning. And we're also in education, so we're all about capacity building. What a great intersection, right? In capacity building in an ever-changing industry. The reward of a century, if you ask me. So you know how Apple and Steve Jobs does the technology versus liberal arts, and that's how he describes Apple? Well, I describe us as technology and education, right? That's our cross. So we're coming at it from the perspective of we're here to improve folks, but if we have to go down the other route, we will. Okay? So here are those 2 other routes, right? If you've ever been in I don't know if you guys know who the Hungerfords are. Typically the lawyers for the agencies. But they'll put this up and say, here's the 2 different routes that you will take, depending on a bad situation that comes up with an employee. You're either going down the discipline route or you're going down the evaluation route. We're not touching discipline. That's not the point of this session, but I just wanted to bring it up so that that's how we always start these things. So, in the evaluation route, you're doing the eval part, and then if you need to, you have a plan of assistance, you may extend it, and then eventually you recommend and dismiss. And in steps 4 through 6, you typically have union representation, right? Who here manages people? Show of hands. Okay, good. Yes. So have you seen this before? Everybody's seen this. Everybody knows this. I've been doing this for 2 years now, so I hadn't seen it, but I had to go through this, so that's why I'm giving you some first-hand knowledge. Okay. The governing documents you have to look through. Board policies and ARs, administrative rules, the collective bargaining agreements for classified staff, the staff evaluation form, how we evaluate the classified staff, and then, of course, the job descriptions and the essential functions specifically on the job descriptions. Right? When you go and write the evals, you're going to make your statements against the essential functions. So, okay. I'm going to source this from Clackamas ESD. This is what we have. You have to look at yours, of course. So there is a board policy that says we're going to evaluate classified staff yearly. This is classified and confidential, but classified for our purposes today. And then there's an administrative rule that's in all of the classified bargaining agreement books that says, here's how to evaluate the staff, but the specific section I'm looking at is the plan of assistance. So looking at the end and working backwards, just in case we have to go that route, right? So for employees beyond the probationary period, a plan of assistance may be developed. The plan shall include those things. Observations may be scheduled. The important thing here is at the end. When you get to plan of assistance, you have two options. You're either extending it, or you're terminating them, or they're coming off. I guess there's three, really. But at some point, you can't keep extending, so that one kind of goes away. So you really only have two options. They're either going to go back to regular employee, or they're going to be terminated. So the moment you get into that realm, be prepared for one of those two options. Sample CVA language. So in the classified bargaining agreement for Clackamas ESD specifically, there's only a little bit, because management retains the right to evaluate, right? That's a management right. Hopefully it hasn't been bargained away. But there's usually specific sections called out in the CVA when the union steps in. You know, that 4 through 6 in the list of steps. So I just pulled out in our agreement where those things are. So representation, the employee has the right to have union representation when placed on a plan of assistance, right? That's 1C. And then over here it says 2B. The association will receive written notice prior to a meeting at which an employee may be placed on a plan of assistance. So our union says you have to notify the union in addition to the employee that you're going to put them on a plan of assistance with that meeting information, right? And then this talks a little bit about the employee evals, but at the end of the day, it's management retains the right to decide how it's going to evaluate, right? These are just things for you to look for in yours. And then this is our current evaluation. I'm sure we all have opinions on our evals and wish they were better, but wow, that's really hard to read on that side. Anyway, the way we've done it is there are certain big areas: job knowledge and skills, communication and interpersonal skills, job performance and professionalism, and then you have 4 options, right? Does not meet, occasionally meets, proficient, and exceptional. Obviously, if they're proficient down everything, then they're an employee that does not have anything negative against them, right? Anything below that means you may have room to move in a direction depending on what you decide to do, right? What I am going to really explain today is what you put in the comments boxes, how you write the comments to support the claims you're going to have to make if you're going to go down that route. Okay? Our old evaluation used to not be like this, and the examples I have is based off of the old eval, but it was just a list of checkboxes with these different areas. What does that say? Adaptability, appearance, attendance and punctuality, communication, compliance with rules, stuff like that. But the ones we would hold our for the eval would be like quality of work and knowledge of work, things like that, right? Okay, so those are our sources, right? Board policies and ARs, the CVAs, the eval itself, and then we're going to talk about the positions after this. People to consider, obviously, if we're all in management here, so the superintendents, the legal counsel, human resources, make sure they're all on the same page. And then on the employee side, it's human resources and their union representation. And we've all got different IT positions, and they're all going to be evaluated a little bit differently. For the server admins and data analysts, I think a lot of the eval revolves around projects, whereas the customer service representative is more around tickets, solving those things, depending on how your jobs are structured. For today's presentation, I have customer service representative, and we'll look at it from that perspective. But what I have for you is going to be adapted to other positions, obviously. Okay. Oops. Go away. Okay. This is the customer service representative, and these are the specific essential functions that we have on our job description. And I listed them all here, but the ones, you kind of boil them down to specific areas that you expect the position to do, right? So if it's a customer service representative, I expect them to answer the phones and answer the questions from the phones. We expect them to train, be able to do effective training, and we expect them to effectively test, essentially, right? So there's these three big pillars. They're captured in the essential functions, but those are sort of, if I'm going to measure their effectiveness as an employee, those are sort of my three big things I'm looking for. So, number 6, test application software documentation before implementation. That's the testing, right? Where's the one in here on training? Develops client documentation training materials and tutorials. And then you have assist in all core SIS functions, including but not limited to school setup, administration, right? So that's the job knowledge. So using that information, we're going to make our claims against these things here. And you'll see how I've done it. I bring it up. Okay. I've boiled it down to 2 ways you evaluate. They either, not pass-fail in a sense of a student, but pass-fail in terms of you either did it or you didn't do it. Right? You either answered the ticket correctly or you didn't answer the ticket correctly. Or you didn't do what you were supposed to do for it. And then, especially when it comes to the training, you've got rubrics involved. So certain things that you're looking for in terms of training, do they meet the expectation? Do they not meet the expectation? Do they exceed the expectations? And what do each of those look like? Okay, so this is a sample rubric, and I call it the ticket assistance rubric. This is my incantation that I created. And if you are a customer service representative, your ability to work that job is going to depend on how long you've been in that job. So I've got a rubric for probationary type employees, and I've got a rubric for, which is on the next slide, of staff that have been there for a while. And what does that look like? You might have them look even different later on. I don't know. But this is what I have. So what I do is I look at a ticket and I go, is it simple? Is it complex? Is it complex requiring additional support? Or does it need to be escalated? Right? That person is not responsible for bringing that ticket to closure. It's really my data analyst or somebody else. Somebody has to go in the back end and fix something, right? That's not for that person to do. As long as they move the ticket along, they've done what they're supposed to. So, those are my different types of tickets. And in each of those areas, I expect certain things. So a general time frame for resolution. If it's a simple ticket, I expect it to be resolved within 24 hours. If it's complex, maybe 3 days, or 72 hours in that case. Complex requiring additional support. It kind of depends on the vendor on when it's going to close, but did we do what we could do, which is call it into the vendor and get it filed, right? And then escalating. Did I decide at that moment or figure out that I needed to get other folks involved, and did I move it along within a certain time period? The other thing that we've typically done with our CSRs is we've said some of them are assigned certain areas, but at the end of the day, they all kind of have to answer for all of them. But I have different standards depending on if it's assigned or if it's other. So when we're doing probationary period, nothing's assigned. So that's why you have the NAs there. For the other areas, if it's simple, we have little assistance is needed, and the CSR resolves on no more than 2 callbacks to the client. If it's complex, the assistance is from an assigned member. So they needed to get the one who was assigned that area to help them solve it. It's all good. CSR resolves or reassigns it to that person to resolve. Complex requiring additional support or escalating. Ticket requires additional action beyond the CSR for resolution, and analyst or the vendor will eventually resolve it. Yes?
Where does priority fit into this? Like ticket priority. Like we get a lot of low priority tickets. They don't need to be tended to, until a week or 2. the teacher themselves select their own priorities.
Right. I guess I'm thinking it from my lens, which is priority. Something has to happen to it relatively quickly. So I just want to make sure it's moving. Not whether it's come to a resolution within your priority constraints. I should say this is what I needed to make this thing happen. I'm sure priority, I can think of other ways that would change this. So I'm just presenting what I had used. There's certainly, that would probably be a good suggestion to this. Yes?
You're presenting this as the expectation setting that you're setting forth
Yes.
to them prior to them doing the job and at the evaluation time. Do you take sample tickets? How do you pull that?
I'll show you.
Okay.
But yes, to answer your question. Okay, here's the rubric for someone who's been here for a while. The hours, right? So now we have a simple ticket. Hey, dude, it should be resolved in 4 hours. I mean, it should be done in half the day. It really shouldn't take longer than that. Less time down in the complex area. They know what to do, so they move the tickets quicker. And then we have assigned areas involved. So if they're simple and it's my assigned area, well, I don't need any help because I'm the one that's responsible for it. So it gets resolved with no more than one callback, no more than 2 callbacks if it's complex, etc. Okay? Does that make sense how I went from a probationary employee to someone who's been here for, I've got it here at minimum expectations of 2 years. Yeah, I don't, yeah. Okay. Let's talk about how I sample when I do the actual eval, okay? So we've realized that we need to do a negative eval. And I'm going to call it a negative eval. I'm not going to call it something that's like room for improvement or something positive. It's like it is what it is at this point. We're going to call it what it is. And probably at the end of the session, you're going to go, geez, McCoy, you're a really hard person to work for. It's not what I mean, okay? It's just we're at that point, so we're going to treat it what it is, okay? So when I write the negative eval in the comment section, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to write an expectation of the position. That's my claim. I don't know if you've ever done debate. They talk about claim, warrant, impact. Claim, I'm making a statement. Warrant, this is how I support my statement. And then the impact, why it's important. So in this case, I'm saying my claim is what I expected the position in that situation. The warrant is how the employee was not meeting that expectation. And then the impact is matching it to the essential functions. Anyway, you'll see how I do it in there. You write your plan for supports on how to improve. And the plan that you do for the negative eval versus the plan you do for a plan of assistance hopefully are different. They're not the same because if you ever get to a plan of assistance stage, you don't want to have all of your options exhausted because you've already done them, right? So you have to think about it. If you're going to go there, what does that look like versus what I'm going to do for a negative eval? And you'll see what I've done to make that different. Plan on interim evaluations when you are going to do a negative eval, and then what I find interesting is you write it in the first person from the manager's perspective. So it's not this, it's truly you. You did this, and I expected you to do that. At least that's how I do it. Okay, so here's a sample language. And I'm sorry I'm reading from the slides, but I got to kind of read it so I can explain to you the nuances of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So here's an example. John's last unscheduled evaluation noted the following areas for improvement. So here's the provide recommendations quickly, accurately, and confidently for both clients and other Synergy support staff in his assigned areas. And then I call out the specific JD essential functions we're talking about, 1, 2, and 3, right? Provide accurate and confident recommendations for other areas of Synergy, 12. So the JD doesn't say provide recommendations quickly, accurately, and confidently. It doesn't say that, but that's an expectation of the position. And the way I can say that it's an expectation of the position is because I back it up with those essential functions, right? So there's the link to my guiding document, essentially. Given that these areas have not improved since the last evaluation, clients continue to complain about his lack of knowledge, incorrect solutions, or need to follow up. Instances of complaints include, I just threw district names in here to anonymize this thing, and the dates are all wonky, so just ignore that part. Reynolds School District has complained of John's constant need to follow up. The client is expecting an answer on the initial phone call. While needing to follow up is an acceptable answer, it must be used sparingly in delivering excellent customer service. Right? So normally, or someone who's just starting out, they'll say, I'll get back to you. Right? I don't know. I'll get back to you. Someone who's new, that's acceptable. If you've been in the job for 2 years, that's not acceptable anymore. And that has to be used sparingly. So that's the expectation I'm setting there. Ben Lapine School District has complained about his lack of knowledge. They must explain the problem to John multiple times before John understands what they are asking. They feel that the correct solution should have been given on the first suggestion. Ben Lapine prefers to speak with other CSRs rather than get incorrect information from John. If John is the only CSR available, Ben Lapine hangs up and tries to solve the problem themselves. Doesn't that suck for them? If that's the feedback I'm getting from a district, I'm writing that in. So these are the two instances of complaints that I've received that I've been able to codify and put underneath my claim, which is clients continue to complain about. Here's the ways that they've been complaining about it, specific instances, right? Below that, lack of knowledge or incorrect solutions are illustrated in the following tickets. So I even have the ticket numbers in there. I say in ticket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, John's solution to clear the browser cache did not solve the ability for a teacher to grade. The correct solution was to grade the assignments for those students so that a grade calculates for the report card post screen. So I put in there, here's the ticket. Here's what was suggested by the employee, and here's what should have been done. It's an instance of lack of knowledge or incorrect solutions. Hello, John initially had the client clear the browser cache to solve a Firefox problem, even though the vendor stated that they do not support that version the client is using. Right? Another claim of lack of knowledge or incorrect solutions. Being very clear about this is what was said, this is what should have been said. John's solution of accessing the view in the new year caused the inability to see some feature was incorrect. Further investigation revealed schedule-based FE had not been configured in the new year. Right? Additionally, John requested examples from the client, even though the client gave the examples in the ticket. So you asked for something that you already had. So another example of lack of knowledge or not having what you need, or not realizing that you had what you needed. And then another ticket below that says, John called due to an error that kept reappearing due to the school calendar being set to the actual date for the start of school, their schedule being published, and student entry dates. John developed the scheduling documentation that you need to do it in a specific order, yet did not realize that that hadn't been followed, right? So this person had created the documentation, didn't even follow their documentation, and that's how we ended up with problems. So that's another instance of lack of knowledge or incorrect solutions. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's an example of the supports of what you would do to differentiate it from the plan of assistance. And I'll give you a plan of assistance example later. Going into a second year of Synergy, John is expected to be at the same level with his Synergy counterparts in terms of knowledge, synthesizing the problem to determine a solution, communicating solutions correctly, and delivering training effectively, right? Those are the pillars of this position I was saying. The goal for both John and the agency continues to revolve around helping John be a productive, supportive, and confident CSR that supports both clients and the Synergy team. And then we say, John will have to make significant progress in each of these items by October 2017, which means that's when we're doing our interim eval, right? We're being very specific. We're saying negative here in these areas. We expect improvement, and this is when we're going to remeasure it in November. He will provide recommendations quickly, accurately, and confidently. So I'm back to here's my claim of what I expect, and here's the bullet points in the job description that back the claim up. Be an authority on the assigned areas of Synergy for both the team and the clients. That's JD Essential Function number 1. Lead training classes in his assigned areas that are delivered in an organized and intended flow. Attendee questions are answered on the spot, and trainings are received with positive feedback. So I have 3 metrics, or yeah, 3 things I'm expecting in there, right? Organize an intended flow, attending questions are answered on the spot, and trainings are received with positive feedback. If I get negative feedback, they have not improved in my negative eval. And then develop the testing deck for quality assurance testing of all areas of synergy, and that's JD essential function number 6. So I'm expecting these things to happen. Now here's what I'm going to do to help. It's not really much, but it's just I'm going to be there. It is expected that John will seek out the support he needs to achieve the above goals. I will assist by continuing to answer John's questions about synergy, encouraging him to solve tickets on his own, either by telling him the necessary knowledge or directing him to ask his teammates for the information. If they want to rehearse training sessions, I'll be there to help give feedback, right? And checking the testing deck semi-monthly to ensure the contexts are a viable deliverable when we do the November eval. And then I said there, I will not be checking the test deck for accuracy, and it will be part of that unscheduled eval. I'm there to make sure that they're going to be successful, but they have to take the initiative to want to be successful, right? That's sort of how I'm setting the supports up. Here are my suggestions for how I think you might be successful, but you have to come seek me to make it better, okay? So we do our evaluation, we find out they're not better, and time goes on, and we realize when we get to the annual eval, we're going to write another negative eval. You can't just keep writing negative evals, right? Because then you exhaust your option of the plan of assistance, because then the union's going to come back and say, well, you didn't really do anything about it, so it must not really be a problem, right? So you have to show that continual problem. Maybe it's getting better, maybe it's not. If it is, great, but maybe it gets worse again, so then it comes back down, so then you evaluate, try and correct again, and maybe it gets better. But then all of a sudden, you've kind of done this a few times, and now we're back down. And at the 3rd hump, it's like, okay, we've got to do something different. So we cut, right? We're going to move to a plan of assistance. Our HR department recommended that the plan of assistance time for completion should be as short as possible. You want to be on the plan and you want to be off the plan as quickly as you can. You'll see how we did that, but anyway. Write the plan in first person, and I used memo form to do it. We're continuing to use those rubrics that I had developed in the plan, so we've kept continuity in terms of eval. And of course, the plan of assistance is always a focus back to the JD, even more so than the negative evals. I have a sample header here, just so. Anyway. In the Hungerford's plan of assistance, they listed out all of these sections. And what's interesting is their plan of assistance was of a custodian who wasn't doing the work they were supposed to. So how do you take a custodial sample plan of assistance and apply it to a CSR, right, or a technology position? So I'm giving you a little more lift than a custodian. They do have 6 sections in them, though. Okay? There's a history section, which you're going to present a timeline recapping all of the evals. You're going to explain supports that were given to assist in the improvement. So there were sections in there where I said they could come and rehearse. I would look at the test deck and make sure that I'm not setting them up to fail, right? You can't set them up to fail. You have to be objective about it and say, I was here to help. You did not come seek me. It looked good, but it wasn't right. The next section, statement of deficiency, what you would have written in the negative eval. So, you know what I was showing you with all of those examples of, well, here's something that happened. Here's how you didn't meet expectations. That's what's going to go in that section. The next one is the program to be followed. So what is the employee doing? Activities to be completed while on the POA, and these activities have to look or should truly reflect a much major lift for improvement than what we've done in the evals. Right? You're demonstrating that we are going on a plan of assistance because we want to see improvement, and it needs to reflect that sentiment. And then the assistance to be offered. So what am I doing as the manager to help get them there? And you'll see how I've written it so that I truly am helping them get up. And then the monitoring system. So what are we going to do above and beyond what we've been doing for the negative evals to hone in on the program to be followed, right? Calling out specific things. The list of activities for the eval must be periodic and mostly frequently, and then use the rubrics. And every week I was doing things, and you'll see what that looks like. And then there's another section on there that says final evaluation, and you put on there the date of the final meeting with the line about the possibility of termination. We're at the point now where we have to make sure we're making that very clear on every document. So don't forget that. So part one of each slide is going to be each of the parts now. So part one in the history. Since you were hired on May 1st, 2017, you have consistently received poor marks on evaluations that have noted your performance needing improvement. So it's that your performance, right? And here we go with our things that we've done to evaluate that. On March 1st, 2016, letter of expectation. This was a letter of expectation regarding lack of following procedures in the areas of testing and security changes, and you summarize. Then we had an annual eval. It was your first one. These were the areas that were noted needing improvement. Okay. Then we did a mid-year eval because that was a negative one, so we checked it again. But you have less areas needing improvement now, or something, right? To show what's happening. Many opportunities and numerous resources were given to you to assist in your improvement, and you can list them very specifically. Here's the things that we did to kind of help you get there. If you notice, a lot of those things are on the employee to improve, though, right? So the employee has to be the one getting the information out of any conferences they've been attending. Any resources or documentation they're consulting, they have to be the ones that are ingesting the knowledge. If they have any questions, they come ask. But generally speaking, it's their initiative, right? Open and encourage access to peers for knowledge sharing since hire, and open door policy with manager. You can write those in too. All evaluations note that your quality of work and knowledge of work. Your last annual eval stated that you would be placed on a plan of assistance if significant improvement was not made towards the goals outlined in it, given recent events, as highlighted in the statement of deficiency, which is the next section. This demonstrates that you have not made significant improvement and you will be placed on a plan of assistance, right? So here's the history, and here's what we're doing. So, statement of deficiency. Like I said, it's written just like how you would have written the negative eval, right? So you have not satisfactorily performed your work as outlined in the job description. Over the last 2 years, evaluations continue to show poor performance in those areas, given recent events. Here's those areas that are still needing improving because of the following. Another ticket. You received a call regarding inability of teachers to take attendance and office staff. You spoke with someone at EduPoint that was new and couldn't help you, but then your colleague came and solved it. And you didn't check another environment which had the answer in it. Anyway, so that's an example of how we're not meeting it, right? Exactly the same thing as before on the negative eval. Here's an example. And then I call it the JD essential functions that were not met by that situation. Right? So you didn't meet number 1, number 2, number 3, number 6, and number 12. And then another example of it. And then number 2, number 6, and number 12. This one had to do with a bug fix. There was a problem. It was fixed in a newer version. You didn't bother to test the newer version, so instead you called the problem in again when it had already been fixed. Why would you do that? At this point, given a certain number of years, I would expect you not to be doing that, right? So just like negative eval. So here's the program to be followed. So you improve the quality of your work as a customer support representative to meeting expectations. In particular, you enter all tickets for calls that are new incidents or follow-up notes for existing tickets. You'll provide recommendations quickly, accurately, and confidently for both clients and other Synergy support staff in all areas of Synergy. You will test and verify your solution with all resources available to you. You will bring tickets to resolution as prescribed in our rubric that we talked about. You'll be an authority on your assigned areas of Synergy, and you can call them out, because that's how we do it. You will answer tickets both within and outside of those areas. You will lead these training classes that are in your assigned areas that are effective and provide value for clients. And then I list there, the trainings that are coming up. You will answer complex impromptu questions in your training classes with accuracy and authority. And if all support options have been exhausted, you inform me so I can assist you in bringing the issue to resolution. So that's what I expect the employee to do as part of the POA. Okay? And here's what I'm going to do to help. So you typically start off with a meeting. This is based off of the custodial one, which is, I'm going to re-explain your job to you. We're going to start again. So you're going to pick a day, and you're going to say, here's the JD, and here's what I expect from the JD. So I'll re-explain your essential functions and expectations in performing those functions as outlined in the job description. I'll also review the rubrics and tools we will use to measure the performance of this plan of assistance. So you make the rubrics known, right? You will continue to have the knowledge and resources listed in Section 1 available to you. And a sample of, you can attach a list of all of the resources that they have to make it known to the union that they have support, right? You will have 30 minutes on your own each day to review materials with no answering of phone calls or emails. So I'm going through this like this because I want you to have ideas for what you can put in your POA. I know they're specific to this, but at least you have something that you can grab and say, oh, let me do that with X person or whatever. For the first week, there will be a coaching period with me. So we talked about that ticket assistance rubric. We haven't, we took a sample to evaluate the effectiveness of the rubric for that person, but we're now in the POA world. Well, I want to give them a week where we're going to use that rubric and we're going to go through each ticket that happens that week. And I'm going to show you how I'm evaluating it. Be very clear about it. And that week will not count towards measuring the performance. Right? So we have kind of this trial week. That's what that is. So you and I will review tickets each week, or each day. So every meeting, we're going to have at 7:30, we're going to talk about the previous day's tickets. Dun, dun, dun. I'll apply the rubric to and give feedback on what I expect out of each ticket. And tickets completed during this time will not be considered during the measuring of performance during this POA. I will continue to observe and send feedback from your training. So I will be in the trainings. I will be taking notes. I will be watching the questions that get asked and answered, and I'll be giving you feedback on that. I will consider any other requests for assistance you initiate. That came from the custodial one. And you should have a midpoint status meeting. Just don't have one meeting with the union and then do it and then have the end meeting. You have to have meetings in between with the union. Okay? So we offered to have one midpoint one where they could be represented. I didn't say that in the CVA, but it's good practice. So we're going above and beyond, right? And then here's the monitoring system. So I will begin measuring performance. The following will occur. So we have to do with reviewing the tickets weekly. And then I say exactly what I'm expecting. So I will inspect the call log from the system. Tickets will be documented according to the document that I have that says how you write out what happened in tickets. You are going to evaluate tickets based on the ticket assistant rubric, which I've shown you. Tickets within your assigned areas are expected to be brought to a resolution at a rate of at least 95%. So I'm calling out specifically, I expect you to bring tickets to a resolution of a certain percentage. So I have 95% right there. Tickets not within your assigned areas are expected to be handled correctly based on that rubric 90% of the time. And you will close at least 30% of the team's tickets. So the reason why we put in a percentage for the team's tickets is I don't want to be evaluating 10 tickets while everybody else has 50 tickets, right? Got to make sure it's all evenly distributed. So that's why that line's in there. If I'm unable to determine the information gathered and actions taken on a ticket, then the ticket is considered unresolved because you didn't document it correctly. If I can't tell what's happening, right? And I have my documentation procedure to back up what I was expecting. My evaluation of the week's tickets will be emailed to you every Sunday night for your review on Monday. So you do have a chance to challenge my resolution on those tickets, right? Maybe there was something that happened that maybe wasn't documented, but it was missed, and I looked at it wrong. Well, you have a chance to get that corrected. Explain to me what happened, and let's adjust it, right? So we're being fair about this. And then disputes on my evaluation of your tickets will be noted in writing. Okay. We will review any, so that's the tickets. Here's the training. So we will review any training you provide, including the training sessions listed. Training will be evaluated using the training rubric, and your training is expected to meet expectations in every area on that rubric. Okay, the next part is to demonstrate your knowledge. You will successfully complete the following. So the other thing I threw in here was an assessment, a knowledge test. I can't control what tickets come in and which ones don't. I can't make the most complex scenarios, even though it's the complex ones that are going to trip you up and is what's giving us all of the pain. I can't control what questions are going to be asked in the training, right? Maybe it's something really difficult and then it does show itself. Maybe it's really easy and it doesn't. That kind of guts out my whole POA. So I have a knowledge assessment built in here that says, okay, you are also going to show me that you know this stuff. And I have an activity there that we do. Okay? And essentially, in this scenario, you're going to build me a master schedule based on a set of constraints. And you're going to schedule 100% of the students because it's a canned scenario. If you don't get 100%, you didn't do it right, essentially. So that's what that knowledge test is. And then I called out my supervisor, so in case something happened to me, this POA can still continue without me. So that's why I have that line in there. Alterations to this plan may be made depending on additional information or lack of need to continue any given requirements. Any additions or deletions will be made in writing to you so that depending on how this plans out, we have wiggle room. And a final evaluation of the satisfactory or unsatisfactory achievement of your performance will be made at the end of the 2.5-month period. At such time, a recommendation will be made based upon your achievement. Okay? Very specific. That's the point. And then the last section, it's really simple. It just says that by the end of the POA, to the degree in which you have corrected your deficiencies, will be reviewed. If you haven't, then it'll either result in an extension or recommendation for dismissal. Okay? Any questions on that? I know it's very detailed. That's the point. So if you noticed, a lot of work for me to do, right? So how do I do this? It's all necessary because it has to be fair. It has to be objective, right? You can't just make it so wishy-washy and you kind of did this and you kind of didn't do that, but I have to be fair about this, right? So how am I going to execute on my end of the bargain, which is I'm going to check every ticket. I'm going to check every phone call. I'm going to review every ticket. So that's where you use your tech background to help you do that. But anyway. So some things that I just want to make clear. It should be obvious, but manager, do what you say you're going to do, right? I said I was going to email that report every Sunday. I better do it every Sunday. If I don't, the union can say something about that, right? If you're the manager, hold up your end of the bargain, right? We're making a contract here to help you improve. If I don't help you in the way that I said I would, then I'm not giving you your true chance, right? It's not fair to the employee. And then if the employee does not cooperate with the POA, well, you have another column that you get to jump to, right? Now we're in the discipline track. So document that and away you go there. Okay. So you asked me how I collect the data, right? So what I did was every day you have tickets from each day, and I called up the ticket number, the district, the area, the date, and then I followed the rubric. Was it an assigned area or not? How complex was it? And was it completed or not? Right? This is an example of the pass or fail that I was saying. You either did what the ticket was asking you to do, or you didn't do what the ticket was asking you to do, and you didn't do it in the way that I outlined in the rubric that it should have been done. So I keep status of not completed or closed score. Now, not completed doesn't mean done, right? Because there were time periods involved. Maybe the ticket is not completed the first day because something needs to happen. Needed more time to research something. So it gets to carry over to the next day. So it's the closed score. That's where I make the final determination. If it's a 0, it wasn't completed. If it's a 1, it was. I I sum up the zeros and the ones against all the tickets I expect, and then I have a little summary thing here. General and assigned areas, how many were completed successfully, how many were completed unsuccessfully. There's a percentage there. Of the other areas, how many were completed successfully, how many were uncompleted successfully. Okay, and then you have each week. How many did John close? How many did the team close? To make sure that I'm checking the percentage of tickets, to make sure it's a 30%, right? What I said I was going to do. And then I have down there the overall status. So what I'm saying is for each of the 3 areas that I'm monitoring, where are you in those 3 areas? Are we meeting expectation? Are we not meeting expectation? Completed unsuccessfully. So every week, this is going out. We're on track. We're on track. We're not on track. We're on track, right? Being very deliberate and clear to the employee what is happening and what is expected of the POA. Okay? Is it time? Half hour? Okay. I don't know. They're all kind of looking at me like. Okay, completing the POA. Regardless of a positive or negative outcome, official notification to be sent, and then you turn everything over to HR, right? And then I've got sample results in here that you can use. So sample negative result of a POA. The plan of assistance required another knowledge test. This was in another case, but POA is considered not passed, therefore you failed to make satisfactory progress in the POA, and I'm recommending you for termination. You sign it, they sign it. That's that. Then we follow up with another letter from typically the director saying, you're hereby placed on administrative leave. Accordingly, you are not to come to the work site, blah, blah, blah. And this is from kind of like administrative end on what's going to be done procedure-wise. They sign it, you hand it off. And at that point, the POA is out of your hands, unless you're hired by the organization. Does that make sense? So those are verbiage and documents that you can use. That's why I put them there, because I had to rely on the custodian who had a POA. And I am now giving you stuff that you can use. And then the last slide here are systems to support the data collection. So we use Web Help Desk to monitor tickets. We also have a in-house developed thing that tails through the call log and pulls out each of the phone calls that they receive so that I can make sure that all of the calls that came in are documented. Because that would seem to be a problem, right? You get all these phone calls and then you're writing them all down, but did you put them in the system? So now we have this call log that says, oh, every call that came in, where's the ticket that matches it, right? I have to give them the tools to be successful too, right? That's one of the ways that if I'm expecting you to put all the calls in, then I better give you a way to know that all the calls, these are all the calls you had that day, right? And here's how you match them into the help desk. Then I had a little script that went through for each of the, actually I can show you this. I don't think there's going to be anything. Okay, here's the call log. 7 calls came in today. My time. There's your ticket, open, close, and you can edit that row. And if I click on the ticket, no, I developed this. Yeah, it's in-house. It's a way, so we use Asterisk, the free PBX phone, and because you're using Asterisk, you can just do whatever you want with it. So we go in and crawl the phone log and pull out the entries and put it in a database. You match them up to tickets, and then you're putting the help desk, web help desk. So it takes me right to, maybe somebody's still on it. Anyway. So a phone call was made, and they're slowly beginning to document what's happening. Okay. That's their end of it. Let me show you how we make that Google Sheet I was showing you. So down here on the bottom, I have each of my folks in there. And I go through the call log, go through the tickets. Which tickets did they touch? Right? And just make me a little list. So every day, going through the help desk, or to this thing, not the help desk. And then I've got a list of everything that I need to look at. And notice I call out the client, the area, the open date, the status. That's all the stuff I'm going to put on my rubric or on my sheet that I'm going to evaluate against the rubric. And then I'm going to click on each ticket, and I'm going to read it. Is it simple? Is it complex? Right? Then I start asking the questions against the rubric. And then I just keep track of it in the Google Sheet. And that's what I deliver every week as part of the POA. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I'm holding myself accountable and holding the person I'm evaluating on the POA accountable. So I'm being very deliberate about, here's where we're at. Here's where we're at. Here's where we're at.
Do all customer service representatives do that too, or just ones that are on the plan?
The ones that are on the plan you do every week. What I've done to, this was my other thing in there, which is I said, you want to make your rubric apply to everybody, right? It doesn't just apply if you're on a POA. This is the expectations of the position. So what I do for the probationary employees to help is I look up their tickets. I pick a week. I've got one coming up. I'm going to have to do this for my latest one. So maybe next week I'm going to decide I'm going to measure the tickets during that period. So I'll go to my little sheet, and every day I'm going to keep track of the tickets, just for that week. I pick a week. And then I sum it up, kind of like what I did for the other one, for the POA one. And then as part of the probationary eval coming off of probationary, I just put that with it. That's the data for it. Right?
So you're just picking random data samples, but a period of time.
Yeah. And then, okay, so how did you do during that period? And that's what I write on the probationary eval. Depending on how they did, they either continue on probation or they go to regular status. Does that make sense?
Not for the annual, so you do the same process when you have a review, but you pick 1 week out of the year?
Yeah. And it's about that time, so I'll probably be picking some weeks soon, right? But, does that make sense? Do you like the system that I kind of have developed here? The rubrics can use work. Priority, I think, is a great example of them. The difficulty of the ticket is the other one. I'm not sure how to incorporate it, but when I went through this, it kind of felt like I needed another element, but I didn't know how to incorporate it, and I still kind of don't know how, but anyway, if you have any ideas for that, but this is what the tool I'm using. I mean, we can give you the phone thing. There's nothing proprietary about it.
Zendesk has a built-in phone log on it, so it'll actually create tickets where it can log. Yeah, so it's got a feature. Costs a little more than that, but you're not going to bill anything.
Right.
Out of curiosity, how many, like, what's your average number of tickets for the whole team per month?
Well, if it's about 130 per week,
Okay.
right, calls plus emails. If it's a high point of the school, you know, like we're getting to the end of the school year, so that's going to go up. It's probably going to be closer to like 170
A week.
a week.
Okay. I was just curious, like, workload-wise, you know, one person that you're able to go through this process and your average is like 170 tickets a week.
Right.
At
But
the
I
height,
wouldn't.
at the peak.
I wouldn't pick that week.
Right.
I wouldn't pick that week. There's so many other things going on that you're going to have to be working on that you wouldn't be doing that.
Right.
So you developed this, I assume, for a reason because
Yes.
you had particular employees.
Yes.
How did it turn out?
They resigned.
Okay.
That's the official term. Yes.
So I'm assuming that most of the requests come into you via tickets or phone calls. What I'm wondering about is sometimes we struggle with, we have site-based tech people that I supervise, so I don't get to see them interact very often, and a lot of what they're doing does not come in the form of tickets. Do you have other things that you are evaluating on outside of tickets and phone calls?
So I don't have staff in that scenario, so that's why although I will soon, so I'll come up with something, or we can all come up with something. One of the interesting things that I've been thinking about, and I was explaining this to Jeff earlier, I guess I'll bring it up again. Everybody know what JIRA is? JIRA is a software development tracking mechanism for software development. So, right, we're not in the software development business. The cool thing about JIRA, though, is you can see the tickets. They call them tickets. They're really things that need to be done in the software, though. And you can see the progression of them in the in columns. In your site, folks, what I would probably do, you know how practical this is, but one of the things I've been trying to do is if you look at this, you can make a window. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed this. Can you see this right here?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Now you can't expect your employees to, well, I worked on this ticket from this time and this is how many hours, right? That's way too much burden for them. I wouldn't expect it. But what if you could make a thing where you could put it in columns, and you could say, I'm going to start working on this ticket, so I'm going to drag it. The clock starts. And I'm done with the ticket. I've been working on it for an hour, whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. But I'm done working on it. I'm going to drag it back. From when I dragged it over to when I dragged it back, those are the values that go in those boxes. So they have to figure that out. And I don't have that programmed. I just have a prototype here. But this is what I'm thinking. That might help that person because they can note stuff later and whatnot, but at least they can keep track of the time. So you drag it over. I'm working on this person is what we're talking about, and you drag it back when you're done. Okay.
I think the tricky part on that is, let's say they're re-imaging a machine that takes, we'll say 4 hours, and they also are doing 2 other things that can pretty much occupy their whole day, and they really only had an hour's worth of work. So that's the hard part I've been struggling with on that particular piece.
Interesting.
It's 4 hours to do the image, but it's only 15 minutes of their time.
That's right. And in the meantime, they're doing 2 other things, hopefully.
So what's more important to you, measuring the time it took to do the whole thing or their work time?
Well, I would like to see their actual time that they're actually working.
So in that case, you drag the ticket over, the clock starts, I get the image set up. Once it's going, I drag the ticket back, and I'm done working on it for a little while.
Maybe
Right?
that would do it.
So to address the text in the field issue, there's, at least the way we have it in our district, there's kind of 2 ways you can deal with that, and there's downsides to doing it in the way we do it. So we have an expectation to our end users that if you have an issue, you will submit a ticket, or we don't help you yet. So the downside to that is that we don't always, that isn't the most friendly customer service face to put on it, right? So I mean, you want to be able to say, yeah, sure, I can help you. The problem we run into when we do that is then we never get the ticket, and then the tech doesn't remember to put the ticket in when they come back to the office because they did it 4 hours ago.
For your field test. So maybe you put it on, I don't know what you put on.
So, I mean, that's the challenge. So it works really well when our end users put the ticket in first. Not so much when they flag you down in the hall and say, hey, I know you're on your way to something else, but I want you to help me right now, even though I haven't followed the process.
We have zonar van tracking, so we know when the techs show up to the school and when they leave.
Cool.
And then I'll look at that time frame and compare it against the work that they did in the school, and then I'll make a determination on whether that should have taken that long or not. And if it took them too long, then I'll go and ask them about it.
Do they only have 1 ticket when they're going there? Or
No,
they,
not multiple.
Right, because they're
And
going to the site.
Sometimes they'll say, yeah, I got stopped in the hall by so and so, and I just have to put the ticket. Okay, put the ticket in.
So, you said it was too onerous to have them put their time in there, but we have all of our techs put our time in there. So whether it's just a 1 second call, 1 minute call, we have some default averages, and then we do audit checks. We'll pull tickets to say, we'll just look through like, well, yep, that took, was there a reason why that took this extra amount of time? They're supposed to put notes if it takes extra amounts of time. And for each note that you put, you can also, you can add time to that note. So it accumulates in the total part of the ticket. And then we can run reports through Web Help Desk that gives us some data on what issues are taking longer, what issues aren't taking as long, and has helped us kind of narrow in where we've got things that we can come up with new solutions for, or areas where users, it's because it shows you some nice little charts and graphs of who's a little bit slower on something and what areas you have to work on.
For me, it's about which districts you should have more time in.
You know.
Any questions?
How much of this were you districts complaining about your sales tax?
A lot.
And during this time, were you reaching out to the
feedback is their feedback that I just incorporated into the email.
And how involved was your HR in this process?
Not for the negative evals. When we moved to POA, that's when we were checking back and forth all the time. Are we allowed to do this? Yes or no? And then we also sought legal counsel at the end.
You reach out for feedback from them as well, so you get positive, negative feedback, or is it mainly just complaints? Okay, what people bring to you?
We do the other thing I didn't really show you in here, and it's in the negative evals, is I actually push out little customer surveys based on when the tickets close. Web Help Desk does it too, but I wanted it a little bit different, but you can actually go in here and but there's certain questions we ask, and you can check on it for place. So that's how I would get the positive feedback. If there's things that they specifically call out that we did well, I mean, I'll remember those two are quickly sending an email saying, oh, so-and-so mentioned this. So I can put it in the email. Yes?
Always hoping, of course, we don't get there, but is there language built into the contracts about multiple POAs, or how long in between doing a POA versus the second one? Anybody have any?
Ours doesn't.
Just curious. I anticipate we did great for a little bit, and now we're trailing off again.
I've never had somebody, I would say survive, but somebody stick with it truly. Pretty much it's the determination or their sentiment.
So I have, and I have to say that though there was improvement, I have had to live with the idea that some people are marginal employees that remain marginal, keep their do enough work to keep their job, not bad enough to you got the union involved in that, and your lawyers involved saying they're not quite there, so you have to get them off the plan. But you get them off the plan, and then as a supervisor, it's very frustrating to say, I can't do any more. I offered them as much support as possible. So now what? And so that's where I am, just kind of hoping maybe some I don't know, guidance or understanding of what about how do you go from there? Because maybe it's just you just have to accept that they're marginal, and then how do you draw out their strengths and be able to maintain your department?
That's why I put the knowledge test in. That was the little component I put in the field, because I can't control all those other things that are going to tell me that the one that gets by enough, but it's really not enough because everybody's complaining about it. Right?
Yeah, that's interesting. And are you sharing some of these documents with us?
I can.
Because you have a few things that I think would be really valuable and appreciate.
Any other questions?
I
don't know.
One quick question. Did you give this employee a chance to work at a different school? Why I'm asking is some schools are a little bit more needy and more difficult to deal with than other schools. And
That's not how we work. I mean, that's not how our agency's set up.
right, because they're not assigned.
They're not assigned.
Okay.
But that's an option, right?
The asterisk, most IT-based systems now support call monitoring and call reporting. Is that something that you build into any of your? So specifically, most of them have call center management extensions, plugin modules that treat your CSA call line as a call center, and you've got access to those records. Is that something you guys employ at all?
No, we didn't deploy that. We've been keeping it simple. It's just a call review thing. I don't want it to be a true call center.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be a feeling like that. So.
Yeah.
But so if I'm saying this call could potentially be recorded, right? I really want to get into that.
Or even listen in. So one of the things you can also do, pretty much all systems support the ability that you can, phone rings, he's going to pick it up, you can hit do extension, and now you can listen in silently.
You're assuming I can have time to do that. Right?
Well,
You're bargaining with them.
But, right?
Well then,
If that was the case, I could probably just sit in the room and listen to them.
That's
And
right.
if I can hear the other end.
I was
of
gonna
it,
say you're moving a lot towards the quality assurance department of what you're doing. Yeah.
Trying to keep
It's
the
a
culture
word about
somewhere.
the tech monitoring phone calls.
Oh my God. Well, we monitor everything. Don't they know that?
Any other questions, guys? So I hope this was useful. Sorry if it's a little more.
Can your presentation's posted online, those documents, those things, are you okay with sharing that out, or does it need?
No, I can share out the actual documents. I didn't want to share out the slides themselves, though. I wanted to turn them into a PDF and then share them.
That would be great.
So.
And are you gonna post on ACP